Okay, my co-hosts are a little late. I'm gonna wait for Bridget and Cousin It to show up. We've got a couple of guests coming in, hopefully, um, and that's going to be War Hamster and Brian Cates. So um, I'm going to bring them up when they get in. Um, and Brian's going to have to cut out in about a half an hour. So I want to get him up here. If I see him come in. Oh, I think he said he's going to be there late. All right. And I'll keep my eye out for War Hamster. So I did put down in the purple pill, and somehow you can put that up top, which I'm going to leave for Bridget to do. Oh, there's Stellar. She can do it. I'm going to let her be co-host until the other girls get here. Stellar, I just sent you a co-host opportunity. I need that map that I put in the purple pill brought up top so everybody could see it, if you wouldn't mind. And man, Rumble's blowing up over here. Hello, everybody on Rumble. Thank you for being here. And I'm on a, oh, there's Brian. Let's bring him up so he can speak. I'll bring Bridget up. I just saw her. Brian, I just sent you an invitation.
All he has to do is hit the request, and it should pop him up right away. I've been throwing it to him as well.
Okay, awesome. So I kind of let's just, since Brian's gonna have to cut out, as soon as he gets the speaker, I want to hear his thoughts. In the meantime, I'm going to read you guys something. Did he just come up? Yeah. Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me, Brian? And Bridget, I sent you a co-host thing. I don't know if you see it. All right. Until Brian gets himself off of mute, I'm going to read a couple of things to you. I do want to, I want everybody to look at the map that we put up front or up top. And Brian, just talk whenever you get on. He says he's muted somehow.
All he has to do is where it says the red with a line through it, just push that and it'll turn purple and then he can speak.
Yeah, Brian, do you know where in the lower left-hand corner where it says mic is on? It'll have like a little circle. There you go.
Okay, how's this?
There. Now we can hear you.
I can talk. I can hear you. I got the mute turned off.
All right, cool. So basically, I want to just take a couple of seconds to go over the picture that we put up top. It's also in the purple pill. down at the lower right-hand corner. If you click on that, everything that we talk about in the space will be posted there. I just want to go over the map. So, because the map is very important. This map shows where the gunman was at on top of the building. And that building has got a slight pitch to the roof, which you cannot tell from the picture, but he is on the back side of the slight pitched roof. It is not a very steep pitched roof. You notice directly behind him is a huge water tower, which I will point out is the high ground in the entire area, which was not covered by any security at all. And then you move to the right of the picture, and we're just going to call that east, whether it was east or not. If you move to the east, you see the red dot, which is indicating center stage where Trump was. You notice the three buildings, the one with the white roof and then two gray roofs behind where Trump was standing. And that is where the pictures were taken of the snipers. There were snipers both on two different buildings. So there were two sets of two. Generally, the snipers have one with the rifle and then one with a sight, so that they can sight in, not that they can't both shoot, but one is basically calling in the sight, the wind, that type of thing, to the trajectory, so that the other person can keep his eyes on the scope, so that they don't have to put their head up like he did, which is ridiculous. But that's why the other guy is there. So those are the things that I wanted to point out. And there's one last thing. In the picture where it says location of gunman, and you go down to the little white dot, just to the left of that, to the west, the white building, there's a little breezeway between the white roofed building and the gray roof building that has the white dot on it. That is on the back side of that where the stairs were that he came up. Those are the same stairs that the cop came up, poked his head above this roof line, and then quickly dropped back down once the guy turned around and looked at him, or depending on which source you talk to. Okay, so the that breezeway, so at least at some point with his gun in the air, he turns around and addresses the cop coming up behind him. So how he knew the cop, that's metal roof, maybe the roof switched or buckled or something like that. But he doesn't have his eyes on the cop. He's watching Trump. But somehow he raises up high enough to turn around and address the cop. And at no time do the snipers use that as an opportunity with the gun visible, because they say that he was like below the crest of the building, the peak of the roof, and that is true. But at some point he has to turn around and address the cop. So I just wanted to point all of those things out. And then Brian, go ahead and let's hear your you made a couple of important posts about this, and I just wanted to get your thoughts.
Before he speaks, I was going to ask if everyone could please repost the space, put bombs, emojis. Everybody should be listening to this stuff because this is very important. And I'm sure that Colonel Towner and Brian and please just repost the space. Let's get as many people in here as possible. Thank you.
So Brian, if you can unmute and go ahead and share your thoughts with us.
Brian, all you have to do is hit
there he is. He's there.
Yeah, the damn deep bag is confusing me. I finally figured it out. All right. there was a cop that went up onto that roof. I believe that's just a story that they're putting out after the fact because there was such strong pushback, and there's so many people giving interviews and there's videos surfacing of people yelling at this, so the Secret Service and the law enforcement in the area, alerting them to the fact that there was a gunman on the roof over there. And so they need to make up some kind of a story about a cop going up there and confronting this guy. And like everything else, there's none of this makes any sense. That they're claiming that these buildings are outside of their security perimeter. And so almost nothing we're being told makes any sense. And so now they waited until like late yesterday afternoon to put out this story about a cop going up there and getting into a confrontation with this guy and then retreating. And I don't buy it. I just put that out there. I don't buy that happened.
Okay. What are your thoughts overall on who benefits from this?
Well, it's obvious what they're doing. I don't believe that loser on the roof was the shooter. Not the real one. I believe they're repeating the same playbook from 1963. And one of the first things you do when you execute that plan, you have to have a patsy, you have to have somebody who's instantly killed, and all the questions stop being asked right there. There's no reason to ask any more questions because the guy who did the shooting, well, he's dead. And you have his body, but you know who he is. And they did this with Oswald back in 1963. They had the story all mapped out. There's some speculation that Oswald wasn't supposed to make it as far as he did. That's why they had to send Jack Ruby into the Dallas police department basement to prevent him from continuing the try. But so they're trying the same playbook. That's my opinion from what I've seen so far. They were able to successfully pull up this playbook back in 1963 because they had total control of everything. They were able to sell a narrative to the public. They quickly had the Warren Commission created. They had Senator Specter out there with his magic bullet theory. And they were able to instantly dismiss anybody who was pointing out the holes in the story about Oswald. So they're trying it again. The only difference this time is they missed, and they missed the target. The target happened to look up at a video screen at the last second, and the bullet missed. Because I think they're kind of stuck with this playbook. People in this country, they're in a very different environment now. It's a really different atmosphere from where it was just a couple of years ago. And it's very different from 1963, where people just believe what they were told. You know, the authorities could come out and say it was a lone gunman, it was one lunatic, some third place for Cuba guy who obviously was out to get Kennedy, some sort of vendetta, because he was a fair play for Cuba guy, and people mostly accepted that explanation. Okay, well, government, yeah, it makes sense. Guy was crazy. It was a guy who defected to Russia and married there, and then came back. So everybody just bought it. They bought that narrative. Okay, and so they're in a desperate situation where they're trying a playbook that's known. We can see through it already, but it's like the couple is trying to bear. They have no choice but to try to repeat what they did in 1963. I don't think the cover story is going to work this time.
I can't disagree with anything that you just said. War Hamster, I know you've got limited time as well. Did you want to share your thoughts? Sure.
Just to add on what you guys have been talking about, the question that I think is the most important is, it seems like it's fundamental to have that rooftop, secure. In fact, wasn't done plan or even, day of that was unguarded. And that's pretty darn mysterious, but even that being said, a 20-year-old kid is going to be unguarded. He's going to be able to climb up and take a shot. It's like a little bit too much coincidence going on there. I think that's the question I'm getting. Because you would think that in most top level security events, stuff like that, you'd never be able to climb under a roof with 150 yards away from the president. The other observation I was sharing live stream Saturday night and followed in real time major events happen. And you saw that was Trump spiked up and Marcus Biden went down, got drifted off a little bit. Kamala almost disappeared.
Sorry about that, War Hamster. Yeah, somebody did that. Go ahead, War Hamster. Sorry, you got cut off.
That was me.
Yeah, now you know why I don't have you as a co-host. Go ahead, War Hamster.
No, I got that later. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Usually me is sausage speak. Sorry.
Go ahead, War Hamster. Where you were saying you were doing the betting markets.
Yeah, so really, right. It's like 2 hours. Trump went up the polls, Biden. The other thing I'm bringing up is change the news cycle. Saturday morning, the major story was how Democrat donors were going to be getting together and pressuring Biden to resign on Sunday. And nobody was talking about that since the whole story's gone. So, there's a few coincidences that worked out towards Joe Biden's favor. And again, the news cycle completely buried Joe Biden being senile. We haven't heard about that in 2 days.
Very interesting. I want to bring up an element, and I think Brian Gamble I sees in here too, that I think he can speak to this as well. Just some generic stuff. I know you guys have probably been in spaces and listening to the television from a military perspective on how these operations go down. I happened to have dinner last night with a guy that spent 2.5 years as the nuclear football guy back in the day. And we were kind of going over philosophically when the Advon team goes out to do the assessment of the venue. It is not unlike a normal war planning application where you go into an area and you basically scope out the terrain. You have all of the geological pieces that are charted on maps, and the most important thing that you paramount to everything is you always secure the high ground. And to me, when I was able to come up with, just in the conversation with the general, that there's like 15 different steps. Every single one of the 15 steps were missed. And I don't mean missed like haphazardly. Like every single one of them was not done. Intentionally not done. whether it's securing the water tower, which gives you of that area your best vantage point. Every piece of the perimeter of that building as it faces the venue that Trump was going to appear at would have had additional people on the roof. You would have secured every entrance or access point to the roof of that building, because that building is within the peripheral of the ability for a sniper to shoot, and you secure all of the perimeters. And so again, we just kind of over dinner walked through, and I was counting them on my hand as he was coming up with them, and I counted 15 different things that was purposely not done. Not, oh my gosh, we forgot this one critical step. Go ahead, Brian.
Well, no, I was just going to add pretty much exactly what you're saying. It sounds like you've spoken to somebody that was definitely knowledgeable, because there's going to be no advance team that's not going to come back and identify that location, what we would call key terrain in the military. That would be identified initially as key terrain. Normally a spotter would have been on that building. But yeah, it's not just a, well, whoops, we missed the roof of that building. But like you said, it's a series of events that make it more and more difficult for any rational person to accept that this was just some sort of like accident or oversight or whatever, because it just doesn't happen. And which leads me, initially my conclusion is this was certainly allowed to happen, and would have been covered up as an oops had they been successful at murdering President Trump. And but yeah, I don't like proliferating any kind of disinformation or fear or conspiracy theory, but when you get to the point where you have so many factors, so many basic, not even complex factors, simple factors not covered, and that's why I was laughing. I was talking to my own fifth group and special forces. I was like, everyone's got to be in this special forces community, but honestly, if you've played paintball on the weekend, you would know that place needed to be covered. This does not take any high intelligent, tactician that's been trained. This is a very, very, very common thing for people that the common person will be able to digest as well, which is another thing, is you can tell the average person is not going to be fooled that is somehow an oversight. But yeah, and I put together a graphic real quick once I identified the scope that was being used, and it's just like they could have counted, Crook's molars or his cavities. That's how refined that scope would have been on that target. So, and the fact that you had two snipers, one acting as a spotter. Somebody said, well, his eye came off the red, the scope. That never happens. Well, this is a very close target. So that scope is usually dialed into things probably beyond 200 yards. So it's so close to this person. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't have taken my eye off the scope to maybe try to correct, like, am I seeing this correctly? But the simple fact that you had another sniper below him and you had other snipers on roofs and you had people yelling at law enforcement, and the one guy gave, I think, a really damaging testimony to the Secret Service. He said the Secret Service were looking at me and we were pointing at him, and clearly there would have been many, 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 many eyes on this guy. And the fact that he said that he saw the rifle, I mean, there's just no excuse. As far as I'm concerned, I'm concluding at this point that this was allowed to happen. The assassination of President Trump was green-lighted by somebody. Now, to me, the question is who green-lighted it? And that's pretty much where I'll leave the statement there.
So, and that's kind of where we get into.
I heard somebody mention the other day, with the type of scopes that those snipers have on their rifles, they would have been able to read the serial number on that guy's rifle.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they had a rangefinder. Mind you, they had a rangefinder. So what people need to know with that is, like, I'm looking at a rangefinder. I see the top of this roof where everybody's pointing, everybody's saying, hey. So I'm using my rangefinder, and it's literally telling me to the freaking inch where I need to click my scope to take this idiot out. And it's just like, how much time did they need? I mean, I'm sorry. I will never accept an excuse that this was just a failure of a sniper to take out a target, because it wasn't just one. It was several, and one ended up taking him out. But, the guy should have never got a shot off. Every common human being with half a brain knows that shot should have let alone multiple shots, let alone a shot that hit his freaking ear a quarter inch away from changing the world forever. And this guy was somehow able to do that. I'm not buying it. No rational person that's ever even hunted squirrels or played paintball on the weekend will ever accept that to be the truth. Because why? Because it's not the truth. It's not the truth. So sorry, I'm getting wrapped up talking about it again. But yeah, it's very good points. It's many, many different failures that any one of those things could have never given this guy an opportunity to ring off a shot to President Trump. But yeah, that seemed to be the design here.
Go ahead, Bridget.
I was going to add to what he said and also ask for the co-host invite. I was glitching earlier and apparently I needed a new invite. Anyway, one of the things that, just from my hunting perspective, having done a lot of long range hunting, 150-yard shot is not, for those who are not familiar, is not a long range shot. It is not a shot that is also going to be subject to wind conditions. So they intentionally left a hole in the security of a previous president in a Trump shot range. Generally, I would say 90% of anyone who hunts routinely with any standard rifle with a standard caliber that is manufactured by a machine. This is not anything that is a high-toned sniper rifle. Can easily hit a high plate with 3 shots at 150 yards. And so for this to have happened, this was not like some very long distance. And that's what most people, having not had hunting experience, it just, to me, needed to be pointed out. This was, of all the places, it just so happened that he showed up on the day. I think the only thing that they were not expecting was the tailgaters at the glass manufacturing company. That was the only thing they were not expecting. But that is, again, just my opinion.
Okay, so I also want to add in here to get everybody's mind around this. So we're going to back out just a little bit and talk about, we know this audience is very well versed in Operation Gladio. We went all around the world. We've talked about the attempted assassinations of heads of state. We've talked about actual assassinations, and we've talked about soft coups. And so I want everybody to kind of engage your Gladio glasses, and you look at the stakeholders of the people that are involved in the selection of elected officials. You guys all know that I refer to them as the International Syndicate, and that they have an active role in making these things happen. Their intermediaries are distributed throughout the government. And of course, one of the very first things that happened was all eyes were on the Secret Service director. And I just want to make sure that if you have not read it, I would encourage you to go to the thread that I wrote about the Secret Service director and I just will quickly point out that, because it's relevant to this conversation, that she had a very interesting 2 to 3 year gap between 27 years of Secret Service experience, which generally, not to say that it doesn't ever happen, people don't leave at 27 years. They generally leave at other increments, because your retirement is based on the longevity that you stay, and there are significant mile markers at certain longevity points. So 27 is an odd number. Then fast forward to the fact that she comes back as the director. That period in between, it has been found on the OPM that she received a payment, which is basically like an annual bonus that you get as a civilian, during that period of time when she supposedly was not a civilian employee, which, having worked in personnel in the government, that physically can't happen. So once you transition, you quote unquote retire, all of your pay records goes to a separate entity, and that's when your IRAs and your 401ks and all of that other stuff starts. It kicks in. You start receiving your retirement pay. So you no longer have an active pay file to receive bonuses. And so that's physically impossible. But what we have learned in Operation Gladio is these people that are on this inside group inside our government are detailed, embedded into civilian corporations as well as other government organizations. You recall back when we done some of our research and found that there were CIA agents embedded. They technically were still on the books as CIA agents, but they were embedded in DEA. They were embedded in the IRS. They were embedded in the military, when in fact they were actually still CIA. So I'm going to suggest that she was embedded in PepsiCo. And why PepsiCo? Well, if you go back and you do your history on PepsiCo, you find out that PepsiCo has actively been involved, not just in spying for the CIA, but actually in coups. So the PepsiCo thing was not an accident. That was a purposeful placement of her in an entity that allows you to travel, because she was in charge of global security. That means she was basically given a green pass to go all over the world and do whatever she wanted to do that needed to be done under the auspices of working for a civilian company, which in fact is not true. Ron, go ahead.
Thank you, Colonel. Have you seen the information about the video from BlackRock where that kid was in? Has been deleted?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you touched that. I came in late.
And Laura, what? No, we didn't touch it. We didn't. You asked if I had seen it. I did see it. And Laura Lomer called BlackRock out for deleting it, and then they come out with a statement. You can go ahead and tell the story if you want, to make sure everybody else has seen it.
Oh no! I didn't. I just saw a clip of it real quick. I thought it was very interesting, going along the lines of with the bigger scheme, Gladio.
Yeah.
I feel like that right there shows complicity at a big company, and I appreciate the information about PepsiCo and what you're saying right there. I think you're spot on.
Yeah, she definitely was hit.
Put the links to that up in the notes. We put the links to your thread and to the Pepsi link in the thread up in the notes.
Thank you, Bridget. Yeah, I definitely think there's some and this is not the first time that they have been identified in some aspect of a larger corporation, which we know is part of the international syndicate, which they use these avenues, these youth programs, to do their screening. And so you find when you go into these schools and they film these clips, and they're using a PR company. And we know the PR companies are integral to the CIA and Operation Gladio for multiple reasons. But they use them as a screening to kind of scan the audience, pick out the people that are the odd ones, and then they can hone in on them. And then you send people in on them in order to groom them into being part of these processes. So the fact that that was found, Ron, you're absolutely right, gives you another avenue into the broader Operation Gladio kind of confirmation. Zama, go ahead. Zama?
Hi, mic check.
Sure.
Can you
Yeah,
hear
there
me?
you go. Yeah.
Oh, great. Thanks. Yeah. Great space, and I like the way this is going, in the sense of pointing out, obviously, the massive holes in security failures with security service, and well, especially is her name Kimberly Cheadle, the
Yeah.
Secret Service
Yeah.
director we're
Yep.
talking about.
Yeah.
Right. Another, I think, important detail to mention here is, and part of her curriculum is the fact that she was involved in the evacuation of none other than Dick Cheney on the September 11th attacks, and has served as Joe Biden's protective detail as well during the Obama administration. So she's been very inside the upper echelons of the POTUS administration from the Bush regime onwards since 9/11. That I think is very important to kind of to highlight. So I think that's something very interesting, and I think again also maybe important to look at how the Secret Service was co-opted into and under the DHS, and I think there is an important element there to look at how Homeland Security was one of the most important, I think, reorganizations of domestic sort of security in the United States since the Cold War, and the way that that's sort of being run, and that goes all the way up to Mayorkas. That's also, we know now, has denied numerous times both Trump and other candidates appeals for added security to their details. So I think there's massive questions to be asked there. I'll just leave it there. Maybe let others sort of chime in, but I would love to entertain a bit more onto what Brian was talking about in terms of the sort of playbook that went on. But I'll leave that to maybe a bit later. So.
Okay, so I want to also, I know that there's a lot of information about false flags, psyops, whether it was, there's been accusations that it was all fake to make Trump more sympathetic and that type of thing. So I want to discuss that for just a little bit. And I want everybody to understand who does not have military background, a little bit of the process and the jargon that's associated with it. As a war planner, when you go through the mechanisms to, and this is true on both the good side and the bad side, because they go through the same machinations that the good guys do. So when you are sitting planning an operation, you have multiple elements of the operation. So in a typical unified command, a combatant command, you have 6 major elements. You have the J1, which is the personnel piece of it. You have the J2, which is the intel piece. You have the J3, which is the operators, the guys that actually are boots on the ground, butts in the aircraft, that type of thing. You have J4, J5, and J6. So you have logistics, you have plans, and then you have communications. So those elements all get in a room together, and you've got your objectives. You have both the strategic objectives, operational objectives, and tactical objectives. So in a situation like this, someone is putting all of these pieces together. I want everybody to understand when we talk about psyops, given that scenario I just gave you, these 6 major elements that are going to be brought to bear on a target and to accomplish the stated objectives that the commander has identified for us. In the J2, which is your intel segment, you have a plethora of aspects of intelligence. Psychological operations is one of the elements of the entire intel package that is brought to the war planning room in order to develop out how you're going to use psychological operations. So it is developed in concert with the overall objective. So if I was the enemy and my job was to assassinate someone, part of the psyops on that objective at both the tactical and the operational level is going to be developing misinformation and disinformation to flood the zone with. And part of that is from an operational perspective. If you're going to line somebody up as a patsy, you have to have all of your cover stories already in the misinformation, disinformation area. You have to have all of that lined up. And all of this is planned well ahead of time. So, and as Brian pointed out, he had to run to an appointment, by the way, Brian Cates. I wanted to make sure everybody understood how that figures into the overall war plan. It is an enabler. It is not necessarily the objective of, and I don't think, based on the way people have been using that over the last 48 hours, most people understand that distinction. So if I wanted to, and as Brian pointed out, there has been as part of the plan to blame someone, and one that he didn't mention was the RFK with Sirhan. Those types of things, you have to flush out that entire story. And when you go to the